Welcome to Creation Health. Our topic for today's class is interpersonal relationships. Interpersonal relationships is the sixth Creation Health principle, and it's a topic that's becoming more and more relevant because 1 out of every 4 people in our society is socially isolated. In fact, people report having fewer close friends today than they had a few years ago. If there was ever a time to explore the wellness benefits of interpersonal relationships, it's today. Today we'll learn how social connection is a predictor of health and the quality of life, and we'll explore the science behind it as well. We'll also learn ways to improve and strengthen our relationships so we can grow closer to those we love. A social system is vital to our health because it improves overall health by lowering mortality rates and improving the quality of life. Deep personal relationships improve the quality of life. God Himself said it best in Genesis 2:18, "It is not good that man should be alone." God designed and created us to be at our best when connected to Him and others. We are relational beings. It's really this simple. God created us to be in relationships, and He craves to enjoy a relationship with us. This presentation will focus on how social connections predict health by affecting longevity and the quality of life. We'll also see some ways to create and maintain healthy relationships. As you know, our theme for this seminar is living life to the fullest, which is God's will for our lives. Social connection is one of the things that makes this possible. So, what do we mean by social connection or social connectedness? Well, in the broadest sense, it means interacting with others, and that means with God as well as other people. Relationships are one of life's greatest blessings. Healthy interpersonal relationships include good communication, sharing, touch, encouragement, and trust. These qualities create an environment of hope, trust, and belonging. Did you know that your social connectedness can be measured? We're going to measure yours using the Social Health Assessment. This is a true or false test. It's called the Social Health Assessment because it'll help you determine the strength of your support system and how it's protecting your health, or not. Please pause the video now, and let's see how you do. You're back. Now, are you happy with your score? Probably, if you're outgoing. But if you're an introvert, this may be a challenge. Try to follow the tips at the bottom of the page to get yourself more connected. The next video is your introduction to interpersonal relationships.
Isn't it amazing how time spent with a friend can make you happy? But researchers are becoming more and more alarmed by a certain trend. People are disconnecting from each other socially. In 1985, on average, each of us had 3 people in whom we could confide important matters. But by 2004, only 2. And today, research indicates that 25% of Americans have no one to confide in. Isn't it sad to realize that 1 out of every 4 people you meet is socially isolated? And this social isolation is associated with a host of emotional and physical illnesses. In general, people tend to engage in destructive behaviors such as alcoholism, smoking, and overeating to help cope with their loneliness. We all need friends, because the only thing in life that really matters is our loving relationships. Friends, family, even pets. Say hello to one of my buddies, Oreo. Speaking of which, do you have a buddy? And I'm not just talking about a pet. Someone with whom you're close to and can confide in. Someone who loves you and wants to help you. If your answer is yes, then you just may have a 3 to 5 times lower risk of premature death and disease. We need friends. And today we'll see and hear compelling research on the subject. So let's join Dr. Winnie King and discover some fascinating information on interpersonal relationships. What do you think, buddy? Oreo says yes.
There are people in my life who just make me smile whenever I think of them. They lift me up and make my life better. Then on the other hand, there are people who, well, you know those kind of people. It's an undeniable fact that good interpersonal relationships improve our life. Dr. Dean Ornish writes this about friendships. I'm not aware of any other factor in medicine, not diet, not smoking, not exercise, not stress, not genetics, not drugs, not surgery, that has a greater impact on our quality of life, incidence of illness, and premature death from all causes. President Abraham Lincoln was known to have said, "The better part of one's life consists of his friendships." Well, sometimes we wonder how this can be true, especially during the cold and flu season. But consider this counterintuitive study. Volunteers were given nasal drops that contained the common cold virus, and, as you would expect, most of them became infected. But those with the most friends were less likely to develop cold symptoms. Social connection and interpersonal relationships foster good health and happiness, meaning friends equates with better health.
Time for another skill builder called the Social Circles exercise. It's on page 166. The Social Circles exercise helps you evaluate the nature of your friendships, like who is most supportive of you. Please pause the video now and take a look. Welcome back. Do you have a good support system, or does everyone else depend on you? From here on out, you can build relationships that will lead to optimal health. Perhaps the best-known example of the power of social connectedness and how it affects health is Dr. Dean Ornish and his work on reversing heart disease. When most people think of his program, they tend to think of a low-fat diet, exercise, and its meditation components. But if you ask Dr. Ornish to comment on the most important part of his program, he answers interpersonal relationships. He says, "I'm not aware of any other factor in medicine, not diet, not smoking, not exercise, not stress, not genetics, not drugs, not even surgery, that has a greater impact on our quality of life, incidence of illness, and the premature death from all causes." This quote came from his book, Love and Survival: The Scientific Basis for the Healing Power of Intimacy, which describes in detail the important research in this area. The link between social support and health is very strong. So many studies have supported this powerful link that it has been named the Rosetto effect. This comes from a study spanning 50 years in the little town of Rosetto, Pennsylvania. Coronary heart disease in Rosetto at the beginning of the study was half that of two neighboring towns, despite risk factors being the same in all three locations. This intrigued researchers, and they spent the next 50 years studying every detail of life of the residents in these three cities to determine why this was true. They discovered that Rosetto was settled by a tightly knit group of religious immigrants from southern Italy. During the first 30 years of the study, these families were found to be highly socially connected via extensive intermarriage, strong family ties, and a supportive, nurturing community. The researchers hypothesized that this high level of social connectedness might buffer residents from heart disease and early death. This was shown to be true when, in the 1960s and 1970s, the cohesiveness of the community began to weaken, and the heart disease rates in Rosetto climbed to the same levels as those in the other two communities. As our social connections go down, feelings of sadness and loneliness can go up. Do you ever find yourself feeling sad, lonely, or depressed? 1/3 of people say they feel lonely. 25% of Americans say they have no one to confide in. 29 million people live alone. Loneliness is fast becoming a major disease with severe health implications. There is a 3 to 5 times greater risk for heart disease with loneliness. Loneliness and isolation affect health. It increases premature death by up to 500%. We need a social support system. Do you have anyone who really cares for you, feels close to you, someone who loves you and wants to help you, someone you can confide in? If the answer is yes, you may have a 3 to 5 times lower risk of premature death and disease. These include a decreased risk of heart attack, stroke, infectious diseases, many types of cancer, arthritis, tuberculosis, autoimmune diseases, alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide, and so on. This reduction in premature death was found both in people who were healthy and in those who were unhealthy at the start of the studies. Loneliness and isolation affect our health by preventing us from fully experiencing the joy of life. When people lose out on this most important element of whole person wholeness, they tend to engage in unhealthy coping behaviors and can sink into depression. Some of these unhealthy coping behaviors are smoking and overeating, which obviously affect our health in a bad way. Loneliness and isolation can increase the risk of premature death by 500%. In short, anything that promotes a sense of isolation often leads to illness and suffering. Anything that promotes a sense of love and intimacy, connection and community is healing. The famous Alameda County study is one of the most quoted studies on social support and gives some of the very best evidence for the positive effects of social support. The Alameda County study followed more than 7,000 people for 40 years. People classified as lonely and isolated had 3 times higher mortality, whereas people with many social contacts had the lowest mortality, making the amount of social support the best predictor of good health. Social connection helps prevent premature death. Research shows that people who lack social ties have an increased risk of dying from coronary heart disease, stroke, cancer, respiratory diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, and all other causes of death. Recently, there has been much research on what helps people live to a healthy 100 years of age. Dan Buettner wrote the book The Blue Zones about the 3 healthiest populations in the world. Here are the common characteristics of people who are 100 years of age or older. They're active physically, socially connected, non-smokers, they eat a healthy diet, get adequate rest, and they live with purpose. Social connection positively impacts our longevity. Time for 2 more exercises from your guide. One is called Be a Friend, and the other explains time well spent that could change your relationships. First, turn to page 168. Be a Friend is a skill builder about good news. Each day for a week, try to elicit good news from your friends, family, and coworkers. Respond with support and enthusiasm. Each evening, write it down and see how you did. On page 171 is the skill builder Time Well Spent. This is more like homework. Spend some quality time with someone important to you and turn off your TV and cell phone. Revisit this page and think about how this changed your relationships. Go ahead and pause the video to take a look. Glad to have you back. So, did you pick a few people to spend time with? What's your next move? Good luck with it. Break time again. Time to relax or take a short walk and clear your head. Just don't forget to make a note of where you left off. We'll see you back here soon. Welcome back. Did you clear your head? Let's learn more about the powerful benefits of relationships.
A wise creator designed us to flourish within an environment of mutually caring relationships. And believe it or not, this begins when we're still in the womb. In a review of 144 fetal studies, we concluded that social support from a partner or a family member is associated with improved fetal growth regardless of a woman's level of acute stressors. In other studies, we found that the presence of a supportive companion during labor and delivery reduced the need for cesarean section and other interventions. In fact, in the control group in which delivering mothers had a supportive companion, the duration of the delivery was only 8.7 hours compared to 19.3 hours for those who didn't have a companion. Healthy relationships are essential to healthy children as well. In looking at more than 100 studies, we've seen that the most resilient children tended to have good social skills, support from mentors or peers, connection to family, and a loving relationship with a caregiver. There's a growing body of research on interconnectedness and adolescence. In 1997, data was collected from 90,000 teens and 18,000 of their parents across the United States. They found that kids who feel connected to family, church, school, and their community are far less likely to participate in behaviors that put them at risk. The standout theme revealed in this research? Connectedness. As you might guess, the connectedness we experience in our younger years also impacts us in our later years. Family relationships are the earliest and most influential as it relates to our health. In one study, adults were asked to describe what kind of mother and father they had. 95% of those who used few positive words and who also rated their parents poorly in caring had diseases diagnosed in midlife. But of the adults who used many positive words and who rated their parents high in parental caring, only 29% were diagnosed with midlife diseases. Interpersonal relationships, a connection to others, improves our quality of life. We also see this in marriage. Many studies show that married people live longer, and they have lower mortality for almost every major cause of death compared with people who are single, separated, widowed, or divorced. Wives who say their marriage is satisfying and supportive have stronger immune systems. They have a higher percentage of T cells and more helper lymphocytes, as well as less depression and loneliness. One interesting study posed this question: does your wife show she loves you? Those who answered yes showed a reduced risk of angina, which is chest pain related to narrowing of the coronary arteries, even in the presence of other high risk factors. In the longest continuous study in the world on aging, we found that a warm relationship with our spouse is an excellent predictor of aging well. From before we were born and continuing throughout our lifetime, interconnectedness makes us stronger, healthier, and happier. Friendship is vital at any age. Active seniors in retirement homes who were visited 3 times a week showed increased immune function within just a month. It's the social contact that creates life-enhancing results. In a study involving female breast cancer survivors, women who participated in a weekly support group lived 2 times longer than women who didn't participate in a group. Men who were socially isolated and under high stress had more than 4 times the risk of dying from heart disease. Positive social interaction and interpersonal connections promote longevity, improve the quality of our life, and make us happier.
Support groups are a part of Dr. Dean Ornish's program. The discovery was made that relationships that are nurtured and flourish play an important role in reversing heart disease. This research was groundbreaking. In another study done at UCLA, a group of malignant melanoma cancer patients participated in a 6-week, 90-minute weekly support group. Another group did not participate. Sessions included education, stress management techniques, coping skills, and social support. 6 years later, the people in the support group had a 70% reduction in death rate and almost half as many recurrences of the cancer. In another landmark study, Dr. David Spiegel of Stanford University found that women with breast cancer who participate in psychosocial support groups live significantly longer than cancer patients who do not. He reports that the groups in the study met once a week for 1 year. 5 years later, Dr. Spiegel said, "I almost fell off my chair when I read the results." The women who had the weekly support group lived an average of twice as long as did the other group of women. All of the women who did not have the support group were dead after 5 years. The only women still alive were those who had received the weekly group support sessions. Also, the time from the first metastasis to death was significantly longer in those who had received the weekly support groups. It's exciting to learn that similar findings come from separate studies involving people with lung, breast, and colorectal cancer. Social support is a powerful health and wellness booster. A study on a group of 30 elderly people in retirement homes showed increased immune competence in terms of both natural killer cells and antibodies from being visited 3 times a week for a month. Lack of social support reduces suppressor T cells and is associated with recurrence of some illnesses, such as herpes simplex type 2. Princeton psychologists found that undergraduates with low social support perceived their environment as significantly more stressful. They also had lower levels of upper respiratory defense antibodies than with highly supportive relationships. In a study of 38 married women, researchers at Ohio State University College of Medicine found that marital quality was significantly associated with immune function. The women who perceived their marriages as satisfying and supportive had less depression and loneliness, as well as better immune defenses. Negative social interactions can weaken the immune system. In married people, in a 30-minute discussion of marital problems where hostility was shown, there were greater decreases over the next 24 hours in the function of the immune system. In other words, your immune system is less effective when you're in conflict with your spouse or your companion, even when you're otherwise happy. A similar study echoed this finding. Couples who had been married for an average of 42 years and had constantly argued had weakened immune systems. Social connection does boost the immune system. In a very interesting study of 276 healthy volunteers who were given nasal drops containing rhinovirus, researchers assessed participation in 12 types of relationships. These included relationships with a spouse, parents, parents-in-law, children, other close family members, close neighbors, friends, workmates, schoolmates, fellow volunteers in charity or community work, social or professional relationships, and members of religious groups. 1 point was given for each type of relationship when a person spoke, in person or by phone, to someone in that category at least once every 2 weeks. So, the maximum score was 12 points. Also, the total number of people with whom they spoke at least once every 2 weeks was also counted. Almost all of the people who were exposed to the rhinovirus were infected by it, but not everyone who was infected developed signs and symptoms of a cold. The number of social relationships played a powerful role in protecting the infected people from developing a cold. Social connectedness even enhances recovery. Consider the following study. Special care patients were told what to expect during the postoperative surgery period. They were informed of the normal pain following surgery and were taught relaxation techniques, such as deep breathing. They were also taught how to move to reduce pain after surgery. The anesthesiologist visited his patients the next morning after the operation and once or twice daily. When compared with the control group, these patients needed 50% less medication after surgery. Those who were encouraged by their doctor were ready for discharge from the hospital 2 7/10 days before the control patients who did not receive the special attention. In one definitive study, researchers were able to demonstrate the power of social support independent of other factors. The Nihonsan study was done in Nippon, or Japan, Honolulu, and San Francisco. This very large study classified Japanese Americans according to the degree to which they retained a traditional Japanese culture and maintained their social networks, family ties, and community. Amazingly, the researchers found that those who retained their culture of support had a prevalence of heart disease as low as those living in Japan. Social support not only boosts our immune system, but increases longevity too. A loving God created us to enjoy a relationship with Him and others. These caring and supportive relationships benefit everyone. The need for relationships and companionship and love starts at conception and continues throughout our lives. A study found that those who received what they believed to be satisfactory prenatal social support experienced fewer difficulties in labor, delivered babies of higher birth weight, and gave birth to healthier babies as indicated by their APGAR rating. Also, those who received social support during pregnancy reported lower incidence of depression after pregnancy. We have a story for you now about pregnancy, about an unborn baby girl and her big brother Michael, his faith, and his indomitable spirit. Dr. George Guthrie, one of our speakers, will read the story for you now.
It's a little story called Keep On Singing. As would any good mother, when Karen found out that another baby was on the way, she did what she could to help her 3-year-old son Michael prepare for a new sibling. They found that the new baby would be a girl, and day after day, night after night, Michael would sing to his sister in Mommy's tummy. The pregnancy progressed normally for Karen, who was an active member of the Panther Creek United Methodist Church in Morristown, Tennessee. Then the labor pains came. Every 5 minutes, every minute. But complications arose, hours of labor. Would C-section be required? Finally, Michael's little sister is born. But she is in serious condition. With siren howling in the night, the ambulance rushes the infant to the neonatal intensive care unit at St. Mary Hospital, Knoxville, Tennessee. Days inch by. She gets worse. The pediatric specialist tells the patients, there's very little hope. Be prepared for the worst. Karen and her husband contact a local cemetery about a burial plot. They have fixed up a special room in their home for the new baby. Now, instead, they plan a funeral. Michael keeps begging his parents to let him see his sister. I want to sing to her, he says. Week 2 in intensive care. It looks as if a funeral will come before the week is over. Michael keeps nagging about singing to his sister. But kids are never allowed in the intensive care. But Karen makes up her mind she will take Michael whether they like it or not. If he doesn't see his sister now, he may never see her alive. She dresses him in an oversized scrub suit and marches him into ICU. He looks like a walking laundry basket, but the head nurse recognizes him as a child and bellows, "Get that kid out of here, no children allowed." The mother in her rises up, and the usually mild-mannered Karen glares steel-eyed into the nurse's face. Her lips a firm line. He is not leaving until he sings to his sister. Karen tows Michael to his sister's bedside. He gazes at the tiny infant, and he begins to sing in a pure-hearted voice of a 3-year-old. Michael sings, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." Instantly, the baby responds. The pulse rate becomes calm and steady. "You never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away." The ragged, strained breathing becomes as smooth as a kitten's purr. "The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms." Michael's little sister relaxes as healing rests, seems to sweep over her. Tears conquer the face of the bossy head nurse. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Please don't take my sunshine away." Funeral plans are scrapped. The next day, the little girl is well enough to go home. Woman's Day magazine called it the miracle of a brother's song. The medical staff just called it a miracle. Karen called it a miracle of God's love.
Many studies that have looked at children and how they are affected by their environment have focused on trying to understand why some children are extraordinarily resilient in the face of adversity, while others are not. By resilience, we mean the ability to function well despite challenges that would often impair performance. Let's look at some of the research in this area. Resilience is the dynamic process that leads to positive adaptation, even within a context of adversity. A qualitative synthesis of over 100 resiliency-related studies revealed 4 main individual-level protective factors. Social skills such as empathy, communication, and pro-social behaviors were consistently helpful. Problem-solving skills, a sense of control, and a sense of purpose or future were the other 3 protective factors. Families, schools, and communities all played an important protective role in resilient children's lives, with the main finding being that if support in one context was lacking or negative, another needed to make up for it. Aspects of protective environments included caring relationships with adults or peers, high expectations for contributing or doing well in school, and opportunities for meaningful participation in a club or caring for a sibling. To summarize this qualitative study and others on resilience, they all highlight common factors across 3 levels: individual, family, and school. Resilient kids tend to have all of the following skills, which are related to social connection: good social skills and support from mentors or peers. They also have a connection to the family and a caring relationship with a caregiver. They have positive self-esteem, a sense of future, clear expectations, and achievement in school. In all of these studies, we see a common core of individual traits and sources of social support that contribute to resilience. These protective buffers appear to make a more significant impact on the life course of the individuals who thrive despite adversity than do specific risk factors and stressful life events, and they transcend ethnic and social class boundaries. In 1997, a massive study was launched collecting data from 90,000 teens and 18,000 of their parents across the United States. Now, this study provides a suitable capstone to the growing body of research for understanding which factors are most likely to protect youth from harm and a destructive lifestyle. The one word that encapsulates all this research is connectedness. In short, kids who feel connected to family, church, school, and community are far less likely to participate in behaviors that put them at risk. And they're healthier. One of the most interesting and powerful examples of how loving relationships may affect susceptibility to disease asked male students a questionnaire to measure how they felt about their parents. In the first test, students were asked, "Would you describe your relationship to your mother and to your father as very close, warm and friendly, tolerant, or strained and cold?" 35 years later, medical records were obtained on these participants, and detailed medical and psychological histories were conducted. 91% of the participants who did not perceive themselves to have had a warm relationship with their mothers 35 years earlier had serious diagnosed diseases in midlife, including coronary artery disease, high blood pressure, and alcoholism. This compared to only 45% of those who perceived themselves to have had a close relationship with their mothers. Similarly, 82% of participants who had low warmth and closeness scores with their fathers had diagnosed diseases in midlife, compared with only 50% of those who did have high warmth and closeness scores. The researchers wrote, "The perception of love itself may turn out to be a core biopsychosocial spiritual buffer, reducing the negative impact of stressors and promoting immune function and healing." They also looked at the data in a slightly different way. These students were asked, "What kind of person is your mother?" and "What kind of person is your father?" The researchers simply counted the number of positive or negative words the students used in describing their parents. They found that the number of positive descriptions while in college was a significant predictor of their future health and illness in midlife. Although the words provided by the students covered many facets of love and caring, a simple score reflecting the total number of positive words predicted future health and illness 30 years later. In a related study, researchers at Johns Hopkins Medical School tested and followed more than 1,100 male medical students. They were studying whether or not the quality of human relationships might be a factor in the development of cancer. Researchers used a questionnaire called the Closeness to Parents Scale to assess the quality of the students' relationships with their parents. At the time of this questionnaire, all of these students were healthy. Medical students who subsequently developed cancer were more likely than their healthy classmates to have described a lack of closeness with their parents when they were tested up to 50 years earlier. They found the predictive value of this test did not diminish over time and was not explained by other known risk factors such as smoking, drinking, or radiation exposure. They learned that the best predictor of who would get cancer decades later was the closeness of the father-son relationship earlier in life. Many studies have shown that married people live longer with lower mortality for almost every major cause of death than those who are single, separated, widowed, or divorced. For example, a study was done that included 1,401 patients who experienced acute myocardial infarction and studied the influence of marital status on the in-hospital and long-term survival rate. Results indicated that married patients who experienced an acute myocardial infarction have a significantly better survival prospect. A 10-year follow-up of 888 subjects also showed a significantly better survival rate for married people compared to those who were not married. The perception of being loved can significantly diminish the risk of angina and other health problems. Happily married women have stronger immune systems and report less depression and loneliness. One of the most significant reasons why social support increases health is because people who feel loved and cared for are much more likely to choose behaviors that are life-enhancing rather than self-destructive. The longest continuous study in the world on aging that investigated mental and physical health suggests that adults aged 70 and older may have greater control over their physical and mental health than previously recognized. Dr. George Valiant and his colleagues found that the 7 protective factors that distinguished the happy well from the sad sick are under at least some personal control. We have considerable control over our weight, exercise, education, and our abuse of cigarettes and alcohol. Our coping skills and a warm relationship with our spouse are excellent predictors of aging well, too. What a refreshing thought! Living a long and healthy life may not have as much to do with our genes as it does with making wise lifestyle choices. One of the most powerful components of good health is touch. Touch is perhaps the ultimate expression of social connectedness. In a landmark study that spanned 3 generations of families where child abuse had occurred, the most powerful predictor of child abuse was not necessarily whether the abuser had himself or herself been abused, but instead whether the abuser had been deprived of positive touch and its associated pleasure. Observations made by researchers decades ago as they watched groups of monkeys provide us with some of the best information on the power of touch. Researchers compared monkeys who were raised together in cages to monkeys whose only social contact came through seeing, hearing, and smelling other monkeys. They found that the monkeys who didn't have touch or body contact with other monkeys grew up with a variety of emotional abnormalities. Mothers who grew up without touch showed less warmth and affection toward their own babies. Some even killed their babies. Many years ago, a famous research study was done at an orphanage. The researchers wondered why at certain orphanages the children were healthy and well, and at others there were high death rates. They learned that the assistant at that orphanage where children were healthy simply touched and held them. The skin is the earliest sense organ to develop. Many researchers argue that it's also the most important. According to one health journal, a piece of skin the size of a quarter contains more than 3 million cells, 12 feet of nerves, 100 sweat glands, 50 nerve endings, and 3 feet of blood vessels. Overall, the skin has about 50 receptors per 100 centimeters, or a total of 900,000 sensory receptors. Viewed from this perspective, the skin is a giant communication system that, through the sense of touch, brings messages from the external environment to the attention of the body and the mind. Let's watch the DVD to see the latest research on loving touch.
I'm sure you're getting the picture, but did you know there is healing in loving touch? People who touch and are touched enjoy the best health. And it doesn't have to be dramatic to make a positive impression. In one study, as students left a university library, they were asked how satisfied they were with the service they had received. They didn't know that the study wasn't about the quality of library service at all. It was about the effect of touch. The library clerk was instructed to touch half the students very lightly when returning their library cards to them. The students who had been touched had a much higher opinion of the service they received at the library. But it isn't just human touch that affects us positively. Believe it or not, the loving, affectionate touch of our pets impacts our health positively too. A year after having been admitted to the hospital for chest pain or a heart attack, only 6% of the pet owners had died, compared to 28% of the patients who didn't have pets. And this was independent of disease severity. Touch will heal your soul. Social connection will relax your mind. Supportive interpersonal relationships will enhance and restore your life.
God wants us to enjoy life and be happy, and we enjoy life most when we're connected and interacting with others. But positive interpersonal relationships don't just improve our lives, they make life worth living. Here are 4 ways you can start improving your interpersonal relationships to enrich your life and better your health. First, simply just reach out. Most people are just as shy as we are. Do what I try to do. Push through the shyness and connect anyway. People are eager to make new friends. Many of them are just waiting for someone to make the first move, to initiate first contact. Be that person. Reach out. Trust me, it's worth it. It's as simple as saying, "Hi, my name is Nancy." Consider making it a goal right now to warmly greet at least one new person every day. Smile at them, and guess what? I bet they'll smile back. And it'll warm your heart a little bit. Savor the moment. Next, mingle with people. Get out there and enjoy being part of a group. Be involved with life. Be more of a participant and less of a spectator. Interact, connect, and remember to go have fun with your friends. The third one is volunteer. Volunteers report experiencing what they call a helper's high. It makes them feel good. And lastly, accept people unconditionally, just as we want to be accepted. Embrace them, love them without an agenda. Life is tough enough. Just be their friend. Be grateful for their companionship and never take them for granted, because life becomes joyful, meaningful, and thoroughly satisfying when we share it. That's creation health.
Those who enjoy regular, satisfying touch, a pat on the back, a warm hug, seem to enjoy the best health. Their hearts are stronger, blood pressure is lower, stress levels are decreased, and tension is reduced. Touch is very important to our health. Try these simple ways to add more touch to your life. Acknowledge your children with a hug, kiss, or a gentle squeeze of the arm. Shake hands when greeting someone. Have a massage. Get a manicure. Volunteer at a local hospital or volunteer at an animal shelter. Pet a dog, cat, or bird. From these examples, you can see that touch doesn't have to be dramatic or uncomfortable to make a difference. This was illustrated by an unusual study conducted at a university library. As students left the library, they were stopped and asked how satisfied they were with the service they'd received. The students didn't know that the study wasn't really about the library. It was about touch. The library clerk was instructed to very lightly touch the hands of half of the students as she returned their library cards upon checking out. However casual or even meaningless this contact may have seemed, researchers found that the students who had been touched had much higher opinions of the library service than those who were not touched. In a study where tactile kinesthetic stimulation was given to preterm babies consisting of body stroking and passive movements of the limbs for 3 15-minute periods per day for 10 days, the touched and moved babies averaged a 47% greater weight gain per day, as shown on the first column of the chart. The second and third columns illustrate how the stimulated babies were more active and alert during sleep-wake behavior observations. The stimulated babies attained a more mature rating on all of the assessment scales. Finally, babies who received human touch and movement had a hospital stay that was 6 days shorter, that yielded a cost savings of thousands of dollars per baby. Kyrie and Brielle were born 12 weeks early. Kyrie was doing well, slept most of the time, and was gaining weight, but Brielle was faring poorly. She wasn't gaining weight and had breathing and heart rate troubles that resulted in low oxygen levels in her blood. During an episode when Brielle was at her worst, one of the nurses decided to try something she'd heard about at a seminar the previous year. With the parents' approval, she took Brielle out of her incubator and placed her in the incubator with Kyrie, whom she hadn't seen since birth. Immediately, Brielle calmed down. Her blood oxygen levels improved, and she began sleeping better and gaining weight like her sister. Occasionally, Kyrie would put her arm around her sister while they slept. Brielle fully recovered. This event played a significant role in changing the way premature babies are cared for in hospitals across the country. One of the great ways nature encourages us to connect is through animals. Many animals naturally seek out human relationships. Unlike humans, animals offer unconditional love, soothing the mind and body. His unconditional love is a glimpse of how God loves us. The unconditional love we get from animals is well illustrated by a study that discovered the positive effect a dog can have on lowering blood pressure reactivity. It had an even greater effect than that of a human friend. Why? Because the friend was often perceived as judgmental, as opposed to the dog. The impact of pets on the elderly has also been researched. In one study of Medicaid patients, pet owners made fewer visits to their physicians than non-owners. Animals have been used to promote health in hospitals. Research has found that patients in hospitals, including mental hospitals, recover faster and are discharged sooner when pets are present during treatment. Those in convalescent centers and even prisons are being helped by animals. In one of the most successful programs of its kind, a social worker introduced small animals like fish, parakeets, and so on to prisoners as mascots. Among the prisoners were murderers, rapists, and others who had committed violent crimes. Allowing the criminals to care for the animals almost completely stopped fighting among prisoners and suicide attempts. This should be a nice exercise. Reach out and touch someone on page 167 of your guide. Healing touch can take many forms. So as you reach out and touch someone else, remember that you need human touch as well. Pause now to review the assignment. Glad to see you back. In the next few weeks, you may find it interesting how this exercise impacted you. And there's one more component to interpersonal relationships and the social connections we've been discussing, and it's this: reaching out through service or volunteering. Let's look at the latest research. A survey of 3,296 volunteers from big cities to rural areas were blessed with a feel-good sensation that became known as the helper's high. Listen to some of these quotes from volunteers in the book, The Healing Power of Doing Good. I got very excited. I felt very in control of myself and my body. I felt very strong physically, almost like nothing could conquer me. When you help others, you feel so good inside that it makes you explode with energy. Another person wrote, "Some months ago, I was so stressed out that I could barely get 4 hours sleep at night, and I had all sorts of aches and pains. I had even tried antidepressant and anti-anxiety drugs, but to no avail. Then I experienced that love truly heals. When I do nice things for others, I definitely feel a physical response. I can now sleep well at night, and most of my aches and pains have disappeared." The dramatic improvements in health produced by helping others have specific, identifiable stages. It begins with a physical high, a rush of good feelings. It involves physical sensations that strongly indicate a sharp reduction in stress and the release of endorphins, which are the body's natural painkillers. This initial rush is then followed by a longer-lasting period of improved emotional well-being. The research indicated that helping strangers was important in order to get these benefits. Unlike the have-to helping of family and friends, helping strangers increases the volunteer's sense of self-control, which then reduces stress. Frequency also proved to be a critical point. Those volunteers who regularly helped strangers for 4 hours a month were 10 times more likely to say they were healthier than once-a-month helpers. It's also important to note that their health gains started after they began helping. Nationwide surveys indicate that close to 90% of committed volunteers say they are healthier or as healthy than others their age. This slide reports the answer to a question in a study on service about how long the glow of the helper's high lasts. The study included 246 people. About half of the participants commented on the endurance of the glow and said that the glow kept returning when they remembered helping. Another study found that volunteers were blessed with a boost in their ability to learn as a result of their involvement in volunteering. Alan Lux, author of The Healing Power of Doing Good, makes the following quote, "In asking the overworked person to make additions to an already busy day, I can easily imagine the skeptical laughter of readers who feel sufficiently pushed to the wall by their existing job responsibilities. It is ironic, but true, that one way to relieve the pressure is to do something extra." John D. Rockefeller Jr. said that giving is the secret of a healthy life, not necessarily money, but whatever a person has of encouragement, sympathy, and understanding. We know John D. Rockefeller Jr. was familiar with giving through the generosity of his father, John D. Rockefeller Sr., but here's the rest of his little-known story. He entered the business world with gusto and drove himself so hard that by the age of 33, he had earned his first $1 million. 10 years later, he owned and controlled the world's largest business. By the time he was 53, he was the world's first billionaire. Meanwhile, the people he had crushed in his pursuit of wealth hated him. Workers in Pennsylvania's oil fields hanged him in effigy. He was guarded day and night by bodyguards. He had developed alopecia, a condition in which the hair falls out. His digestion was so poor that all he could eat was crackers and milk. He was plagued by insomnia. The point was reached where doctors agreed he wouldn't live another year. Then something happened to John D. Rockefeller. He started thinking and caring more for others than himself. He decided to use his billions of dollars for the benefit of others. Hospitals, universities, missions, and private citizens were the beneficiaries of the hundreds of millions of dollars he gave through the Rockefeller Foundation. His generosity aided in the discovery of penicillin. His contributions to medicine enabled researchers to find cures for tuberculosis, malaria, diphtheria, and many other diseases that robbed so many of life. His contributions helped rid the South of its greatest physical and economic plague, the hookworm. When Rockefeller began using his riches to help other people, he helped himself. For the first time in years, he was able to eat normally. He felt renewed. He slept soundly. He defied the odds and lived to see his 54th birthday and many birthdays after that. He kept on giving and caring for others, in fact, until he died at the age of 98. The point here is to reach out and help those around us by living an unselfish life of service. So, what's the best way to get started volunteering? Well, first of all, personal contact is important. Second, help often. Have a goal of about 2 hours per week. Third, volunteer in an area you're familiar with or will be trained in. And fourth, volunteer in an area of personal interest to you. Often people say, "Oh, I tried volunteering, but it just isn't right for me." The truth is, that particular experience was not right for them. Choosing the right place and kind of volunteering is key. Are you ready for another exercise? This one is about getting started in service of others. Please turn to page 173 to learn more about how to get started and how to enhance your service experience. Pause the video now and consider a personal contact or a group you'd like to help. Welcome back. Did you make a commitment? When you do, remember what John Maxwell tells us, that genuine concern for others is a lifestyle more than a technique. Let's move on to the video. Let's look at some other ways to create healthy relationships and grow closer to those we love. First, share their life, victories and other things. Affirm them. Focus on the positive and respond to them in a sincere, authentic way. Time is precious, so set aside time to be there for one another. Actions speak louder than words, after all. Thirdly, enjoy touch. A handshake, a pat on the back, hugs, kisses, massages, etc. And practice forgiveness. Pray for those who hurt us and seek God's help for the situation. Think people like you? Then they do. Doubt it? Then they probably don't. Psychologists randomly divided 60 undergraduates into pairs and had each pair chat for 5 minutes. Then they separated the pairs and told some that their partners liked them and others that their partners didn't like them. None of this was true, of course. Later, they had the students meet again for another conversation. This time, the researchers looked for clues. They found that when students were led to believe they weren't liked, they acted in unlikable ways, making less eye contact, sitting farther away, and revealing less information. But when students thought their partners liked them, both partners got along better. In a related test, researchers found that regardless of their researcher-provided ratings, the students who felt good about themselves were more likely to believe that the other students liked them. The lesson here is that our perceptions affect the reality of our relationships. A positive attitude about your relationships is very important to having positive relationships. Next, try to be flexible and have a plan B. Flexibility in relationships helps people to better weather the storms. And lastly, don't play fair. We often treat people how they treat us. That's playing fair. But if you want your relationships to improve, then don't play fair. Love and forgive people even if you don't think they deserve it. Strive to understand one another and choose to accept differences. This promotes social connection and closeness. Practice forgiveness. Forgive others first, if for no other reason than that God loves us and forgives us unconditionally. This last exercise is about how to forgive one another on page 172. Why should we forgive one another? Why is it so hard? This exercise will show you how to help God help you. Forgiveness gives healing not only to the other person, but to yourself too. Pause the video now and take a look at the exercise. You're back now, and you might have someone unpleasant on your mind. That's okay. Martin Luther King Jr. tells us that forgiveness is not an occasional act. It's a permanent attitude. Give it time. In the meantime, you can reinforce positive relationships in your life. Reach out to others. Let them know that you care and are thinking of them. Remember, it's better to eat Twinkies with friends than broccoli by yourself. Christ said, "I am the vine and you are the branches." The branches cannot live without connection to the vine, and connection to the vine equates to connection to others. God wants you to enjoy life in its most abundant form. He designed you in such a way that you can only experience that kind of life when you have a vibrant relationship with Him and other people. Getting connected with God and those around us isn't just a good idea. It's as essential to our health and well-being as the air we breathe. Remember, choosing to have healthy relationships brings joy and fulfillment to life. So connect with others today and live your life to the fullest. And don't forget to review your Tips for Success on page 174, where you'll find power tips on how to improve your relationships. Here's what some of our graduates are saying about the course.
My favorite part of the Creation Health seminar this week was the concept of interpersonal relationships, because I have gained such great friends in these ladies.
Yes.
We'll close with some trusting insight from Dr. Des Cummings Jr. as he answers the question, how do negative people in my life really affect me?
Creation Health is comprised of 8 letters. Each has significance and vitality around it. For instance, the letter I. Interpersonal relationships is one of the keys to health. I tell you, I am endorphinized or stressed by the quality of the relationships around me. You could come into a work setting and find people excited and energetic, and you find yourself caught up in an environment that endorphinizes you, makes you feel more spontaneous, ideas flourish. Or you can come into a setting where it's critical, divisive, and contentious. You can find yourself diminished. It affects you mentally, physically, and spiritually. Creation Health is built around the whole idea of being able to lift you up through interpersonal relationships. It is only as you experience love in your life, the ability to give it and receive it, that you become fully vitalized and fully human and fully alive. That's Creation Healthy.
This concludes our Creation Health training on the topic of interpersonal relationships. As we proceed on to the next lessons, we'll continue to discuss the remaining principles in the Creation acronym. Congratulations! You're well on your way to becoming a certified Creation Health graduate. Good luck on the quiz.